Hello viewers, welcome to the YouTube channel and I'm your host Sushil Shalot. In this video we are going to learn or will understand what is the offset function in Excel and how is it to be applied. Well, offset function returns reference to a range that is given number of rows and columns from a given reference. That means from a given reference a delta amount of rows and delta amount of columns are offsetted and then a delta amount of rows and columns are considered in the offset function. Well, before I confuse you anymore, let's get on to the Excel file and understand what is the offset function. In this Excel file, we see a database wherein monthly values or the names of the months against their cells have been quoted in column A and B respectively. Now, offset function has a syntax of a reference cell. Then the next thing what it requires is the number of rows that has to be offsetted with. That number can be either positive or negative, but of course it has to be integer. And then the next thing is the columns, the number of columns by which the offset from the reference is to be done. The next thing is the height, that is the number of rows that are to be considered or the cells in a row are to be considered. And then finally the width. The width corresponds to the number of cells in the columns. That means in other words the number of columns to be considered. Well, before I proceed on into the practical aspects of this application of offset function. Let me explain you the syntax here very well by example. So here it is. I am choosing to go on ahead with the offset function. In this offset function, the first thing is the reference. Now I'm going to choose the value B2 as the reference cell. The next thing is the number of rows. So if at all I wish to offset the value by say 2 rows, I'll give 2 here, then the comma. If I wish to retain the same column, then I can opt to give a 0 value, or I can opt to give only a comma here as input. That means there won't be any offsetting in the height in the column, and the same column will be written. The next thing is the height. Say a height cannot be 0. Mind well, height and width has to be either positive or negative integer, but it cannot be 0. So any other value than 0 is acceptable for height and width. So I'm going to give here 1 comma 1. So when I give the height and width as 1 each, it means it will retain minimum 1 cell. So now here it says offset from the reference value B2 by 2 rows and no columns, that is the same column is to be retained, and then the cell width and height both are 1 each. That means from the offset value from the reference B2 it will go down by 2. When it is positive value it goes down, when it is negative value it goes up. So there it is. So from 525, that is B2 cell, it will go 2 cells down in the same column. That means the value will be 250, and there it is. So with this explanation, I hope the syntax and the inputs required for the offset function are clear to you. Now let me give you a little demo about how offset function means by the values those are keyed in. So now in the offset value, the reference has been given as B2 and the row has been offsetted by 2 rows. Now if at all I happen to say I want to offset the row by say -1. That means the row will be offsetted by 1 row up. That means now it will be B2 minus 1. That is, it will go to row number 1. That is the first row, and as it is the same column, it will return the value same. And there it is. Now if at all I opt to give a value, say reference here I have put in B2 and -1, that is the row will go 1 up. If at all I choose to give the column value as also -1, then certainly it will go 1 column to the left. That means from B2 cell now it will go 1 column left and 1 row above. That means the value again will be month. So now from B2, as per the given inputs, went 1 column to the left and 1 row to the top, and that is why the value month popped up. Well, if at all I choose to give here the value as column offset, say I give by 1, it should return a error, and the error here is represented by 0. That means what has happened here is from B2 cell it has gone -1, that is 1 row up and 1 column to the right, and when it has gone 1 column to the right, what has happened? 1 column up, 1 row up and 1 column to the right, it has gone to C1 cell, and C1 cell here is empty, and hence the value 0 has popped up, or other words, it has given error. Now in case if at all I choose to give here the value of the height, that is number of rows to be considered in the range, if I give it 3, what do you expect to happen? Let me tell you, it will return an error of value. The error of value here is, that means in one cell, that is D6 cell, it cannot compensate 3 height values, that is 3 cells in that, or rather in that column, that is corresponding to 3 cells corresponding to 3 rows, which will return here, right? So what happens here is, in one cell it does not return the 3 cell values, and hence it gives the error value. What can we infer from this, or what can we conclude from this? Very simple, that in offset, whenever a range of height and width is given greater than 1, or lesser than or lesser than -1, then offset function has to be nested with some other function which works with the range values. For example, there are functions like sum, average, max, minimum, count, variance, and many more which work typically with range values, and there the offset function can be used. Well, rather than just giving you a talk on this, let me give you a valid practical example here. So now in this database, if our requirement is to find out the sum of the last quarter of the months which are already introduced into this database, how can it be done? Well, before we proceed with that, I want to give you a little demo on count a function, because we are going to use this function in this application. So when one says count a, it returns the values of non-empty cells in the given range of database. Now when I say count a and I opt to choose the cells from B1 to B10, by default it will return the values 10, because there are 10 cells. First cell is a text value and the remaining 9 cells are numerical values, so total 10 is what it returns. Now either I choose to give this range this way, or if at all I choose to give the range, say count a, and I opt to choose the complete column B. There it is. Now you see, when I opt to give the complete column B, it chooses all the cells, or it gives the count of all the non-empty, non-blank cells from this column B. And by default here it is going to return value 10. Well, if at all I add a number here, say A, if I say a text here, you can see in column B it returns the value as 11, whereas in this case where the range got over at B10, the value A, that is B12 cell, was not in the range, so it did not count it. And that is how one can use the count a function. But well, I like to give you a word of caution here. When you are opting to choose a column, make sure that the column has got only those values which are of our interest or our purpose. Fine. With this caution, let me tell you, with the BB cell or the BB column chosen, we have got choice to select till the last cell that will be quite big in value, and that will be a huge database to consider. That means if I choose here and I go to the last cell in this database, it will give a value of quite a big one, and that will be very seldomly required. Okay, so let us move on to the sum of the quarter. And how do we do that? There are two ways of doing it. The first way is I can choose to go up to the cell number B7 and then count the next 3 cells in the quarter, or I can opt to go to the last cell and then count the 3 cells, so 1, 2 and 3. That is what I can give as an input. So that is how it can be chosen from. So either go to the last one and choose the 3 cells, or go to the 7 cell and then choose the next 3 cells. So now let me go over here and use the input. So there is a sum. Now what I'm going to sum is the offset. What do I need to offset? So with the reference of B1 cell, I'm not going to lock it with function F4. I'll leave it as a relative cell. And now the next thing I need to do is to count. So I'm going to use count A function here to count the number of cells. Those are live or those are available or non-blank in this. So I opt to give the value as B to B. That is, I'm choosing the complete column for the count A. I close it. And when I do that, what happens? I'll give a demo first about this and then explain you the mistake that I'm going to make here. So I choose to give the rows, those are to be considered in this sum. So these are the total rows of which I need to only consider the same column. So I'm going to give 0. So the columns is 0, that means only the same column. Then the height comes in. So now I am going to go to the last cell and then from there I am going to count minus 3 cells. That is the height of the count here or the offset is minus 3. And last but not the least is 1, that is the width of the cell, that is the single column I am going to consider. Now friends, here the count A is going to count from BB column. We already saw the count here is 10, and when I say enter, it it gives me a value 1750. Well, let us consider the last 3 cells, and their sum here turns out to be 900 plus 850 plus 750, that has to be 2500, whereas what Excel has done is it has only considered the last 2 cells. Now why was that so? Very simple. What it did was it counted all these cells, and from these 10 cells it counted 1, 2 and 3, that is the only last 2 cells. So that is the reference. It counted the 10 cells, whereas my interest was the 9 cells of my consideration. So it has given me a wrong value. If I do minus 1, the complete height will reduce by 1 and then it will yield me the correct answer. So here I am putting in minus 1 and say enter. It gives me the correct value. So friends, take this word of caution again. Be very sure about the offset command, what needs to be considered in the offset, from where it is to be referred and up to where it has to be. Had I chosen to give the reference as B2, it would have given me a different value. Let me give you a demo here. I'm removing this minus 1 and I say enter. So what it did was, again it only counted the last 2 cells. So well, when you are counting from the positive side, that is from top to bottom, make sure that you give the correct references and the correct values. So here I am going back to minus 1 to the count A and I'm going to demo you. There it is. So that was how it was counted in the positive direction. So what this did was it went from here 1 2 3 4 5 6 and 7, and from there it counted the next 3 cells. So 1 2 and 3, that is how it worked. Good. So we have to be very careful about the references and how we calculate. Now let me show you or give you a demo of how to work the same thing other way around. So in the first case, we went to the last cell and from there we reversed 3 cells upwards. Now I'm going to give you a demo of going to the 7th cell and then going up downwards. So again, I'm using the same reference. I'll give the comma and use the rows. Now here I'm going to use again count A function. Same. I'm going to choose the B column. Once the B column is done, I'm going to give a direct value of minus 3. That means now I want to stop the count 3 cells before the last cell. Give a comma. Now I have to choose the column. I have to return the same column, so again 0. Now the height. Now height here will be 3 positive, that is plus. That means in this case it will count downwards 3 cells. That is the last quarter of the given database and the width remains 1 as earlier. I close the parenthesis and say enter. Again, I forgot to give the second parenthesis of closure, and that's why it was giving me that help. There it is, the function is well in front of you, and the value of 2500 turns out to be correct. So now if you check the syntax for your reference, I'll just copy this and I'll paste it here. This was the syntax of the second way, and this was the syntax of the first way. So that is the difference between the two. Well, either you count from the top to the bottom or from bottom to the top, the answer remains the same. Now, what happens if there is some addition of new value here? Suppose there is a sale value of October known now, and it turns out to be 1000. As soon as that value is entered, the value of sum of the last quarter turns out to be 2750. There it is. Friends, this is a very small database, and so it's easy to calculate or to cross check it. In case if it is a big database, it becomes very tedious, and so be careful when the functions are keyed. Now this next function is average. That is what I'm going to give you a demo, or I'll make use of the same syntax here or the same values here. Instead of sum, now only thing is I'm going to type average. So I'm going to copy this over here. I'll say is equal to average. Now what to average out is this value that is our copied is going to offset all these things, and again the last three cells is what I want to average out. So I'm going to close the parenthesis here and say enter. There it is. Now the value turns out to be 916. That is quite correct. So if I choose this last three cells, there it is, the average turns out to be 916.67. The next one that I have demonstrated you here is max. I'm going to use the max command. Now what max command does is it returns the maximum value from the given range of database. So I'm going to use the same offset function here. So I am nesting it with the max function here. Now what it will do is from the last three cells, the maximum value that pops up will be returned as output. And there it is, the value of 1000 is in front of you. Now friends, I'll give you one more example of count function. How to use count function? Well, it is quite simple that if I give a count value here and I choose over here, now count returns the numerical cells, the count of numerical cells. So I'm choosing the column BB. So the first cell in column BB, that is cell, that is a text, and so count will not count it. So what count will count is the values of cell from B2 to B11 is what it will return. So I anticipate it will return the value 10. And there it is. It's quite simple to use count directly. Now in case, if at all, I'll give you a practical aspect. If at all this column B happens to be hidden and not in our vision. So now how do we count it? Well, count function is possible only when we put it like this and we type it B to B. But now we don't know if it is hidden or not, and in hidden, what is it? So now how we do that is using offset function. Though I'm giving you this as a demo, it is not very practical to use the function count nested with offset. Well, let me give you example here. So I'm going to say offset. Here I'm going to offset this with the reference value of say month. And now what is going to count is from A1 I'm going to shift one column to the right and 0 rows to the right. So now 0 rows and 1 column. That is what I'm going to offset it by. And now what range do I give? I need to count the values here. So I'm going to use again count A function, complete column B to B, and then the width as 1. So there it is. With this, if I say close parenthesis, and say enter, it gives me the value 10. So friends, in this way one can offset n number of columns which are hidden and find out the counts in the columns there. There is no way right now to cross check if this value 10 is correct because the cell or the column B is hidden, and unless we unhide it, it will not be possible to check our count values. So I'll unhide it and check it, it's 10 quite obvious. If at all there is some addition of November, and in this month there is sale of 500, there it is, all the values in all our references have accordingly got appended. Friends, there is a much practical aspect of application of offset wherein a dynamic named range can be created. In my next video, I'll be covering it for you to understand and learn. I hope the topic covered in this video has been helpful and understood by you very well. You have liked it. If you have liked it, please express your like and comment at the YouTube channel as ever. In case if you are new to the channel and have not subscribed it yet, please do subscribe the channel for lot many videos that are already on the channel and further videos which are being published at the channel. For any of your requirements, do put your requirements in the comments at the channel page, and till the time I am back with my next video for you to watch. Have a safe and nice time. Bye bye.